Hey guys, we are on chapter 15, page 100 of our Hank Zipzer book. I know it's been a while since we read it, so um, I want if you need to go back and look back in the story after you read it or before you read it, that's fine. But I'm going to just read chapter 15 and then you're going to follow the rest of the directions on the board. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know Mrs. Fink. I've known Mrs. Fink all my life, and I think she's a nice lady. But watching her and Catherine doing the tongue tango was just more than any guy should ever have to see. Remember, he was trying to go save the salami, and Catherine, the what is she? Lizard, jumped on Mrs. Fink. Ashley, Frank, and Robert had already met up with Papa Pete outside. The four of them were waiting for me under the awning of our building. "You're late, Zip," Frankie said. "What happened to you?" "Our iguana fell in love with Mrs. Fink," I answered, knowing that would shut him up. And it did. He just grabbed his stomach and pretended he was going to throw up. "Let's go," said Ashley. "We're late." "Excuse me, lady and gentlemen. May I ask what it is we're late for?" asked Papa Pete. "We have to go to the deli," I told Papa Pete. "I don't have time to explain now, because we have to get there before Carlos leaves on his delivery run." "He leaves at 10, said Papa Pete. "That gives us exactly 5 minutes. We took off down 78th Street toward Broadway. Cheerio tried to keep up with us. His 4 short legs moved as fast as they could, but they didn't cover much ground. He looked like he was on one of those treadmills people use at the gym. When we came to our first red light, I picked up Cheerio and tucked him under my arm. We waited. It was the longest red light in the history of electricity. "Don't look at it," Ashley said. I swear it makes it stay red longer." We all turned away. When we looked back, it was still red. I turned to Frankie in desperation. "Say your magic words," I begged. Frankie faced the light, put his hands in the air, and said, "Zingawee!" The light changed from red to green. "I am all powerful," said Frankie, half believing it. "Actually," said Robert, "the light is set for a minute and 22 seconds, depending on traffic flow." "Shut up, Robert," we all said, as we always do. We crossed Broadway and ran the last block to the Crunchy Pickle. It was one of those crisp, cool New York mornings, a perfect morning for running. In the summer in New York, you don't feel like running because it's hot and you get all sweaty before you even start. In the winter, it's so cold that when you run and breathe hard, the air stings inside of your nose. But when you run on a fall morning, boy, it feels just right. We go to the deli and I pushed the glass door open. Carlos wasn't there, but Vladimir was working behind the counter, putting toothpicks into cheese squares. Vladimir Olfesky is our weekend cook and sandwich man. He's from Russia, and he speaks English with a thick accent. I was scared of Vladdy at first because he never smiles, and also he has a lot of reddish blondish hair growing out of his ears. It's not actually that much hair, but as far as I'm concerned, any hair growing out of your ears is a lot. I remember thinking that Vladdy reminded me of a werewolf I saw once on a late-night movie when I slept over at Frankie's. Papa Pete tells me not to look at his ears. He says that when a man can stuff a cabbage like Vladdy can stuff a cabbage, what's a little ear hair? Vladdy had his back to us, and he was singing this Russian song he always sings. It is the saddest song you've ever heard. Once I asked Vladdy what it was about. "A man looks for fish in Volga River," he said. "No fish there, so he must eat only snow and stale bread." My family sings this song at parties, and we cry like babies. Those Olfeskis must be some really fun party animals. "Hi, Vladdy," I said. "Where's Carlos?" "He has left," Vladdy said. "Oh, no, how long ago?" "Maybe many minutes before," Vladdy answered in his thick Russian accent. "We had counted on following Carlos. How else could we get to Mr. Cristiano's? We didn't even have his address." "This is bad," said Ashley, a real fly in the ointment. "No flies here," Vladdy snapped. "I keep place clean." "Vladdy," said Frankie, saying every syllable very clearly. "Do you know the address where Carlos went?" "He write it on paper," Vladdy said, pointing to a pad of paper we keep by the phone to write down deliveries. Ashley grabbed the pad. The top sheet was blank. Obviously, Carlos had taken Mr. Cristiano's address with him. "Another fly in the ointment," Ashley muttered. "Pardon, missy," Vladdy said, his blue eyes squinting at Ashley from under his big red eyebrows. "I say no flies." Frankie looked at the blank pad. "Carlos must go through a lot of pencils," he said. "He writes hard. Look, every word leaves an impression on the paper underneath." That was all I needed to hear. "Vladdy," I said, "can I borrow your pencil?" He took the pencil from behind his hair and handed it to me. I wiped it off quickly to make sure it didn't have a loose ear hair on it. Then I laid it on its side and began rubbing the lead back and forth over the blank piece of paper. The paper turned gray except the parts on which Carlos's pencil had written the address, which stayed white. As I shaded over the whole page, little by little, the address popped out. I got it, I yelled, looking at the piece of paper. 541 Riverside Drive, apartment 4B. I ripped the page off the pad. Let's jet, I said. I looked around for Papa Pete. He had slid into one of the booths with a cup of coffee. Come on, Papa Pete, we've got to hurry. I just got myself a Danish, he said. Can you take it to go, Frankie asked. Is it absolutely necessary, asked Papa Pete. Abso 100%lutely, said Frankie. In that case, I think I can, said Papa Pete. He wrapped the Danish in a napkin and shoved it in his pocket. Papa Pete, you are the greatest, I said, dashing to the door and holding it for him. Is someone going to tell me what this is all about, I asked. No time now, I said. Later. Okay, Hanky, said Papa Pete. The mystery continues. Close the door, Vladdy called after us. No flies. I tucked Cheerio under my arm, and we tore out onto the street and headed down toward Riverside Drive. It was about 4 blocks to Mr. Cristiano's apartment. We'll never get there before Carlos does, Frankie said. I think we have a chance, I said. I happen to know that Carlos is not the fastest delivery guy in town. He is the nicest and the best dressed, but not the fastest. I hope I don't get an asthma attack, said Robert, panting hard. Ashley turned to him and said, You don't have time, Robert. Oh, right, he said. It may sound amazing to you, but Papa Pete had no trouble keeping up with us. He's in great shape. He's big, but he's solid muscle. It's from the bowling, he always says. Keeps the man fit. I'm sure that walking up and down the stairs in McKelty's rolling ball doesn't hurt either. We reached 541 Riverside Drive. It was a fancy building with 2 carved lions out in front. The doorman was leaning on one of them, picking his teeth with a toothpick. He didn't look friendly. I walked up to him, but before I could open my mouth, old Robert butt in. Excuse me, Mr. Riverside, he said. Frankie whipped around and stared at Robert. What do you think you're doing, he whispered. I'm calling the man by his name, said Robert. It's good manners. That's not his name, numbskull, said Frankie. That's the name of the building, embroidered on his coat. How was I supposed to know, asked Robert. I'm only in 3rd grade. Right, now he was in 3rd grade. When he wants to bore you with the name of every mountain range in Asia, he's a college professor. But when he screws up, he's just a 3rd grader. I turned to the doorman. Has the delivery from the Crunchy Pickle arrived yet for apartment 4B, I asked. No. Just as I had thought. Carlos was late. Do I know my delivery guys or what? That's excellent, I said, because we have a very important matter to discuss with the delivery person who's bringing Mr. Cristiano's platters. Good for you, the doorman said, adjusting the toothpick in his mouth. Who's Mr. Cristiano? He lives in apartment 4B, I said. Says you, he answered. No, really, I said. Take a look. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the paper from the pad at the deli. See, I said, pointing to the address. It's right there in black and white, 541 Riverside Drive. He glanced down at the paper, then back at me. Funny, he said. Looks to me that says 451 Riverside Drive. I looked down at the paper and stared at it for a minute. I couldn't believe my eyes. It did say 451. I must have flipped the numbers around. How could I have been so stupid? I can't even read 3 numbers the right way. The truth is, I flip numbers a lot. Sometimes I flip letters around, too. Most of the time, I don't even know I'm doing it. I hit my hand on the back of my head. I hit my hand on the side of my head as if I could knock some sense into my stupid brain. What is wrong with me? I asked. Papa Pete put his hand on mine. He has big hands, and when he touches you, it makes you feel safe. What's with the hitting yourself on the head? He asked. I'm the stupidest person in the world, was all I could answer. This isn't a tragedy, champ, he said. You just mixed up a couple of numbers. Worse things could happen. You don't understand, Papa Pete, I said. Now we'll never catch up to Carlos. In fact, he's probably already delivered the salami platter to Mr. Cristiano. So, asked Papa Pete, what's wrong with that? Everything. Once Mr. Cristiano tastes that salami, it's over for us. What are you talking about? He asked. That salami is delicious. I made it myself. No, I tried to explain. You made another batch, not that one. There's something terribly wrong with the salami. Carlos is taking to Mr. Cristiano. I ruined it, and now I've ruined Mom's business and her whole future, too. It's all my fault. I could feel the tears welling up at the corners of my eyes. Papa Pete looked from Frankie to Ashley to Robert, then back to me. Does everyone here know what's going on but me? He asked. They nodded. Then I think we have to talk, said Papa Pete. It's time for this mystery to end. So don't forget to follow the directions on the board. I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Hope you guys are having a great day.